Hi guys, welcome to the Rebel Engineer YouTube channel. Today I just want to touch base really quick with you about the tech layoff that's currently going on. As you know, in the last couple of days, Google and Amazon both announced additional layoffs, a couple hundred of employees at Google and a couple of hundred employees at Amazon. And this is not something that is very surprising to me, given that they already lay off thousands of people across different functional areas in the last year. The fact of the matter is, whether the government admitted it or not, we are going through a recession. The interest rate is high and inflation is still high. So couple of that together, the borrowing cost is high, causing businesses to start laying off people en masse. This is nothing new because last year we have seen about 270,000 people in tech getting laid off. The job posting for tech declined around 30%. The job posting in India declined about 90% for the big Magnificent Seven FANG companies. Other companies like non-FANG, like Nokia, Qualcomm, and VMware, they keep axing people, hiring thousands of employees. They're trying to cut costs by firing people and using AI to replace their current employees. And you gotta understand, like companies, they look after the shareholders. They don't look after you. They don't look after the employees. They look after the shareholders. It's called fiduciary duty. That's very clear that whatever they're doing right now, it makes sense, right? It makes sense from a capitalism perspective. They're laying off people. So just a couple of days ago, Google fired hundreds of employees from their hardware, Fitbit, and Pixel divisions. They also fired the two co-founders of Fitbit, a startup that they acquired about a year ago for $2 or $3 billion. My take on this is they can cut all the costs that they want. They can cut the snacks, they can cut the therapies, massage, but they cannot cut their way into innovation. They're just trying to cut costs because they cannot compete against ChatGPT. Because if you look at the past, Google innovation is not dependent on headcount cutting. You look at the way Google bypassed Yahoo in terms of search engine, the way Google using Gmail to bypass Yahoo Mail, or the way Google lead the market. Usually they don't create products that lead the market by firing people. So I would say that the sign that they are firing people like this is not good. Shareholders can think that, hey, if they're firing people, it means that they're going to be more efficient. They're going to make more money, right? That's the logic. But if you look at the Google history, most Google products are not a result of firing people, are not a result of firing headcounts. I'm really worried about Google stock here because I think when you are firing people, it not means that you are being efficient or you are being innovative. It just means that you're not doing a good job. You're losing market share. You're losing the AI race. Cost cutting do not bring innovations. It just brings more shareholders value. It just brings more budget. But you have more money, more budget, doesn't mean that you are going to win in innovations. There are startups with limited amount of money who win against big competitors. And the fact that Google search beat Yahoo search showed that innovations are a result of innovation. I think that this cutting of people show weakness and not strength. So this is something I really worry for Google and for Google stock in general, and all the Google employees. So with that said, I think that, as I mentioned earlier in my previous videos, I believe programming is kind of dead. It's not completely dead. When people say programming is dead, they think that programming is going to disappear. Well, I don't think programming is going to disappear. The day that AI can actually replace all accountants and all software engineers is far away. But I think programming is going to be here to stay, but it is going to be dead end, which means that the salary appreciation and even the stock appreciations of many tech companies are not going to make up for the inflation of the economy or the inflation of the house prices. It used to be the fact that if you were a factory worker in one of the big four auto manufacturers, you could buy a house in the United States. But nowadays, you look at the housing prices, it's still going up. The point of going to work is to eventually buy a house and have an American dream life, which is having a house, dogs, cars, etc. So programming salary will not be able to catch up with inflation in housing prices, inflation in consumer goods. Gradually, software engineers will have to find other jobs, or will have to find second or third jobs, work multiple jobs to really earn a decent living, to be able to buy a house and live the American dreams. Most software engineers cannot afford such high prices. I have friends who, both husbands and wives, are senior software engineers at FANG. Then they live in the Bay Area. They went around and kept bidding for houses and they keep losing. So software engineering in and of its own is no longer a path to the American dream for most Americans. And I think this trend will also accelerate as a result of AI innovations. That is why I named this channel Rebel Engineer. I'm not saying that you should be rebellious against your boss or be a jerk at work. But you have to understand as a software engineer that you need side hustles. You need extra contract jobs, extra side gigs. If you really want to chase the American dream, even if you live in a low cost of living or high cost of living areas, don't chase the titles, don't chase total comps, chase freedom. I really like this quote that they pay you money, so you give up your dreams. They pay you money, so you give up the dreams that you're going to buy a house. You give up the dreams that you will do side gigs and side hustle. I was one of them. I've been really wanting to do YouTube videos for a while. And I had to put all of these away because I work for some of the biggest companies in the United States and in the world. And the work-life balance was really bad. So I have not been able to create a YouTube channel like this. I love talking in front of the cameras. I love talking every morning. I love sharing about my life and I love sharing all the tips I have for people. But because of the really bad work-life balance that I had in my current company, I have not been able to do this. Don't make excuses. No matter how busy you are, no matter how much work you have in a day, and no matter how busy you are trying to find a job in this market, you need to hedge yourself against recession by having a side hustle. It doesn't have to be YouTube. You can do newsletter, you can do side gigs, you can do side contracts. So I have friends who live in third world countries like Vietnam, Thailand, who work on a couple of contract gigs for American companies, and they got paid about 40-50K a year per job. But if they work 2-3 jobs, that's like $150K a year, living in a extremely low cost of living area. So that is also a path to a really good life, because you don't have to go to FANG or work at like Google, Netflix, Amazon, all these companies just to have a upper middle class life. You can move to a third world countries, work side contracts or side gigs, multiple of them, for companies in the Western world like the United States or Europe, and you get the salaries in euros or dollars, and you use that salary to live best life you can in these third world countries. I see a lot of Americans, they pack up and they move from California to Texas, or they move from California to Florida. You are packing up, you are on a flight anyway. Why don't you just move outside the United States, right? And work for Western companies. Remote work is rampant nowadays. That's why you see the office spaces are vacant and people are moving outside of city centers. So let's keep going. So what can you do as a software engineer? I would suggest that you become a rebel engineer, which means that you look for yourself. You look after yourself. Don't look after your teams. Don't look after your teammates. Don't look after the companies. Because these people, these entities are not going to look after for you. If they find that the economy is being hard and they need to cut costs, they'll cut you. It doesn't matter how good you are. They don't care. So you got to understand, companies look after themselves. You need to look after yourself. Do side gigs, do side contracts. That, I think, is a path forward for software engineers to live the life they want. Companies are pushing for higher performance, squeezing out the productivity of their workforces. They pay 9-to-5 salary, but they expect 996 performance. Software engineering is becoming a race to the bottom. You got to look at the App Store, millions of apps, and all these apps are competing with the top 5 to 10 apps. TikTok, Douyin, Google, YouTube, they are competing with, Instagram. How can a startup possibly compete with these giants? They will have to push their workforce to burnout to be able to compete with these top tier apps. And if the workforce is not up to par, they're just going to do layoff. Software engineering is becoming a race to the bottom. Right? So if you are software engineers nowadays, you have less leeway to negotiate than ever before. Companies ask for 996 performance on a 9-to-5 salary. They ask for 80 hours per week performance on a 40 hours per week salary. Software engineering in the United States is becoming more and more Chinese-like. If you look at some of the job posting online, like even entry-level out of college jobs require 2 years, 3 years, 5 years of experience. Like, how can that be possible? How can a software engineer straight out of college having like 2 years of experience? You look at the tech stack that they require in the job postings, it's usually like HTML, CSS, JavaScript, Angular, TypeScript, Golang, Python, everything together, Kafka, Kubernetes, and 2 years experience and 5 year experience. If you look at most countries around the world, most of the jobs are contracts, right? There's nothing as a full-time job. In the United States, the cost of health insurance is very high. Private insurance is like $2,000 or $3,000 per family for 4 people, right? If you look at most countries in the world where the health insurance is lower, most of them are just contract jobs. And people actually prefer taking contract jobs because they can work multiple contract jobs. And usually taking multiple contract jobs earns you more than taking one full-time job in most non-Western countries. In short, you need to chase freedom and flexibility. not total comps, not brand names, not career path that you're gonna climb ladder. Right? You look at software engineers ladders. Most companies that are not FAANG only increase the salary by 10 to 20% for every level you climb up to. So it is almost equal to as if you don't climb ladder. Even if you look at all the coding gurus and YouTube influencers who are teaching you how to code on or how to get a job in FAANG, you see that even though they are working at FAANG, working at these high-paying tech companies, they still do side hustles. They still do side YouTube videos. That really shows that software engineering and coding are becoming more of a Ponzi scheme. The internet gurus and the influencers, coding influencers are trying to sell you the coding dreams. Like if you go into coding, you're gonna make thousands of dollars. But look at what they're doing. Look at the way that these influencers, these FAANG engineers, employees, including myself, are doing. Right? We are going up here. We're going up on YouTube. We're making videos to make extra income. That shows you that software engineering is not the way forward. And software engineering salary is just not enough in these areas. And because programming has become a dead end, you will see more and more software engineers coming on YouTube and more software engineers doing side gigs and side contract in the future. One of the examples is myself. I'm an ex-Google. And I'm here on YouTube trying to, create a new side hustle for myself. See, many influencers, many YouTubers, they even open courses. Or they have courses, they have communities, advices on how to get a job in tech or how to break into tech. But they themselves are trying to break out of tech, just like me. I'm trying to get out of tech. I'm trying to get out of software engineering. I'll be very honest with you guys. If the person you are admiring, if the person you are following on YouTube, if the gurus you are following are trying to get out of tech, should you be getting into tech? Think about it. The people who you are looking up to in tech, the people you admire, the people who work at Google, Facebook, Amazon, they are trying to get out of tech. And you are trying to get in. You are trying to learn coding. You are trying to learn React Native to get into tech. Just look around YouTube. You will see a bunch of, ex-FAANG engineers or current FAANG engineers who are trying to get out of tech. If you are trying to break into coding, I would strongly suggest breaking into media. Don't go into coding. Because you see, your coding gurus, including me, I'm trying to break out of tech. I'm trying to go into media. I'm trying to make YouTube videos. I'm trying to make side contract gigs because I know programming is not dead, but it is dead end. Look around. Don't listen to what they say. Look at what they do. Okay, that will do it from me. See you in the next videos. Bye-bye.